The Persona games have a lot of characters, but not all of them are created equal. So that got me thinking, who is the strongest Persona party member? And that's exactly what we'll find out in today's video. We'll be ranking each Persona character and comparing their strengths and weaknesses in combat, how they play across the main story, and their peak performance at level cap. Now, the Persona series, even on the hardest difficulty, are not the most challenging games. You can use just about anybody and reach the credits no problem. But that's not to say there aren't some characters that are better to use than others. So let's rank the pros and cons and compare the best to the worst. But first, some ground rules. First and foremost, we will not be comparing the navigators. You have no choice but to use each of the game's navigator. There'd be no sense comparing them. They're the only one you can pick. And yes, this video will not contain characters from the first 3 Persona games. The combat in those titles is not similar enough to the recent games to make any meaningful comparison. No, I didn't forget, it just wouldn't make for an interesting video. We also won't be pitting characters across multiple games against each other. Take, for example, Yukari and Morgana. Of course, Morgana can do more stuff, his game is more recent. Everybody's just split into their own respective games, just to keep things nice and fair. Okay, with that done, let's begin. So starting with Persona 3, easily the most difficult game in the franchise. There's a giant tower, it's full of shadows, and yeah, they do a lot of damage. Specifically those bird shadows for some reason, I don't know why. To deal with this severe amount of damage, you're going to need healing at some point, and that's exactly what Yukari is best at. Being the character that joins you from the very beginning of the journey, Yukari's main asset of the team is healing skills, status recovery, and casting wind magic. From level 1 all the way to endgame, this is what she does. And while this is very rigid, you cannot deal damage if you are dead. While it's true Yukari has the highest magic stat in the game, she is far from the greatest magic damage dealer, as she will never learn the wind boost or wind amp skills. So Mitsuru will always outpace her in damage. But that's fine because she's a support character at the end of the day and she really excels in that niche. She's also the only party member capable of learning wind spells. And in P3, wind skills can be very hard to come by. So until you start making progress in the Fortune social link, Yukari has a good place on your team for a very long time. And for that reason, I think she belongs in B tier. Junpei is up next to the plate, and his skill set varies depending on the version of the game you are playing. For example, in Persona 3 Portable, he learns some skills earlier and learns his best skill, Rakukaja, later compared to Persona 3 FES. But in both versions, he's a heavy-hitting physical attacker who on occasion uses some fire magic. But honestly, I have a difficult time recommending Junpei, as his primary focus is physical damage, but it's not very consistent in the early game, taking huge chunks of his HP to deal only moderate damage, and only to a single target, which encounters in P3 rarely are. That being said, he does eventually learn the skill Ma Rakukaja, which is phenomenal to keep your team alive, and he even mitigates some of the HP loss from his physical skills with Spring of Life. So bad early game, decent late game. C tier seems fair to me. Up next we have... who joins third? It's been a while since I played the games. I think it's... I don't remember. Oh yeah, it's...
I've been waiting for this!
Akihiko is the best character in Persona 3, hands down. No contest. He's the only character who innately has access to debuff skills. This unique position makes it incredibly difficult to justify ever taking him off your team. While his offenses are just okay, he quite literally increases the damage and survivability of everyone else in the party, and can even assist in healing. While it's true debuffs are less useful than buffs against bosses that act twice a turn, for the other 98% of the game where that isn't an issue, Akihiko is almost mandatory for Persona 3 Portable's hardest difficulty. He's also a great source of strike damage given his melee weapon of choice. All around, good luck debating me, but Akihiko is just the best. Now on to the other upperclassman, Mitsuru Kirijo. There's an interesting thing I learned about this character while researching this video. She is the only member of Seas to have access to this skill, Mind Charge, which has led many to believe she is a magical powerhouse. But did you know this skill doesn't function like it does in other games? Instead of Mind Charge doubling her damage and then some, like in other releases, Mind Charge and Power Charge only boost your damage by a 1.9 multiplier, meaning a skill boosted by Power Charge would do slightly less damage than just casting the spell twice. So for most of P3, Mitsuru has a borderline useless skill. She also has Spirit Drain, So now at max level, she has 2 useless skills out of 8. We should also make note of Mitsuru's ability to cast status effects. Marin Karin is very useful against Shadows of the Strength Arcana, but really isn't consistent at all, and neither is Tentarafu. So she's more or less just an ice maker machine. But P3P does give her a bit of a band-aid in the form of a sword. This specific sword granting her Ice Boost, meaning her elemental damage is the best in the game, even if that's all she can do. Personally though, her damage will never compare to the main characters, as they can fuse whatever personas they want and get whatever skills they desire. And unlike Akihiko, she can't actually assist in helping the main character do more damage with any buffs or debuffs. That's why I believe characters that have a supporting archetype are just a little bit better than selfish attackers like Mitsuru. Hopefully Reload fixes the Mind Charge skill and makes it actually good. Middle of B tier. She has pros, but a lot of cons. Aigis, on the other hand, is just amazing. As soon as she joins Cease, she's already packing huge damage in the form of Swift Strike. But as she climbs in the levels, she'll gain single-sided buffs and eventually become the perfect support party member. Diarahan, Samarikaran, and multi-targeting buffs for the whole party, as well as huge physical attacks to boot. And if that wasn't enough, she has access to Orgia mode, which is something no other party member can do. After taking a turn to activate, she'll gain a boost to her stats, and her skills will cost no resources, which can quickly endified if triggered properly. The only real downside to her is a lack of offensive magic if you're fighting a foe that completely resists all physical attacks, which isn't uncommon in Persona 3. Yeah, she's not doing a lot, but frankly, most of her turns are better spent just buffing anyways. She's going in Aegis tier. Get it? Because it sounds like Aegis. And now we have the Stinkies. Ooh. Koromaru needs a bath because his move selection stinks. Cerberus is nearly all offense in a game where you really could use some defense. Usually doing damage is a great way to minimize damage to yourself, as if the battle ends earlier, you take less damage, right? Well, here's the thing. Koromaru's highest stat is agility, which really only benefits himself. His second highest stat is strength, and at 99 he loses all physical moves. Why did they do this? I don't know. I tried time and time again to make Koromaru work in a party, but his stats and his skills are at odds with each other. And in a game where you need every single advantage you can get, that's just not going to cut it. Also, his weakness to light doesn't do him any favors either. I'm thinking D tier for dog. And now we have Ken, who is interesting. He's a jack-of-all-trades character, having access to Cruel Attack, a 100% target heal, electric spells, and Hamon, which can speed up grinding by a significant margin. There's only one problem, and it's a big one. He's weak to instant death, which many of the Shadows in Tartarus possess. Having your healer weak to this is just a recipe for disaster, as usually when the healer dies, your main character is short to follow. He gets some healing skills before Yukari does, but a dark weakness, it's just too big to ignore. Although I will say he's more useful than Koromaru thanks to this healing. It's just not by much.
Oh, crap!
And lastly, we have Shinjiro, and there's not a lot to say here. He has no weakness, which is great, but his move pool is significantly lacking, and yeah, it doesn't really bring much to the table, except some yummy food. But this is a combat tier list, so F for food. But before we get to the rest of the list, a brief shout out to this video sponsor, Atlas, who want me to tell you all about Persona 5 Tactica, a brand new tactics RPG which I cannot stop singing the praises of. The game features a brand new story starring the Phantom Thieves, as they use planning and strategy to clear challenging yet balanced stages. If you can tell from this video, I'm kind of a strategy fan, and I am absolutely in love with Tactica. It has a phenomenal story, amazing music, and honestly well-crafted stages. And the new characters are just, they're so good, dude. One aspect I really appreciate is how each Phantom Thief feels completely unique to each other. Each character having a unique personality that is reflected in the gameplay itself, from their weapon types to the spells they learn and even their unique voltage skills. Mixing and matching teammates together to see who has good synergy was a major highlight for me. And I gotta say, I really dug the fusion system in this one too. I think every Persona fan should give this game a shot, and great news, it's out now on every modern console. So get your copy today. Okay, now back to the rankings. Now that the C's members have been officially ranked, it's time to move on to the investigation team. And while P4 has less combat units than P3, for the most part, a lot of them are viable, except for Yosuke. I don't like Yosuke. The millisecond Kanji joins the team, I bench Yosuke in my playthroughs. Generally, characters in Persona with an even stat spread need to do something extraordinary to stand out, and Yosuke just doesn't do that. Tsukukaja is the least desirable buff of the 3 major stats, and his healing isn't even that good. P4 Golden also introduced a 3rd awakening skill for our heroes, and Yosuke's skill is just Mediarama and Tsukukaja in 1 skill. Which, while this is SP efficient, it's also a partial healing skill in a game where 2 characters get 100% healing skills at around the same time. He isn't even the only character to get access to Garu skills anymore, so yeah, I'm sorry, man, you're not ranking high. Chie, on the other hand, is extremely powerful. I got 2 words for you. Galactic Punt. On risky difficulty, the ability to just instantly kill an opponent with no downside has insane value throughout the entire game. While other characters just knock down opponents with similar attacks, Chie just kills them. No other character does that. Her 3rd awakening skill is also easily the very best. Dragon Hustle boosts your stats all the way, and yeah, that's just like really rare in this game. Usually you have to do that with Heat Riser, but she does it for the whole party. It is true this eats up a ton of MP, but let's be honest, Chie wasn't going to use that anyways. If you spend a lot of time investing in Chie, she can eventually learn Bufudan, and her skill Agniastra can potentially do an absurd amount of damage to a whole horde of shadows, if you get lucky. The only real downside to using Chie is her low HP and endurance stat. Also, there's the Black Spot skill that she sadly keeps for way too long, and it's her most viable attacking option, but other than that, she's a great physical attacker in a game where physical is a very strong source of damage. But her attacks also do a lot of damage to her, and on risky difficulty, that can result in her getting knocked out more times than I'd like her to. Strong, but a few drawbacks, places her at the end of A tier. Yukiko Amagi is the strongest. No, really. She is the ideal party member to me. By having almost no investment in strength, she becomes a durable healer who can also output a ton of damage. And unlike Yukari, she has access to Concentrate in a game where it works properly, access to Fire Boost and Fire Amp, and her finisher, the unique skill Burning Petals. This move on risky hits like a truck, even if it does cost a ton of SP to use. No, really, this just makes endgame a total breeze. Like, you really gotta try it sometime. A master of offense and defense, Yukiko is just the best, possibly in the whole franchise. S tier for sure. Kanji stat-wise is the polar opposite of Yukiko, and in that regard, he actually pairs really well with her. His physical attacks are more consistent, he also is able to reach 99 strength with ease, and has way higher survivability than Chie and access to Matarikaja. Chie and Kanji are neck and neck for physical damage dealing, as both have buffs, high damage, and power charge. But across my various playthroughs, Kanji's best asset to the team is his incredibly high endurance stat, and his 3rd persona, Taikeji Zaiten, has the innate physical resistance ability, something no other party member has. Kanji also has the ability to tank a hit and then use an item to revive someone else, and that's something, sadly, Chie can sometimes struggle with. They're close, but I just like using Kanji a tiny bit more. And now, everyone's favorite mascot. Yeah, I don't use Teddy a lot, but that might change. Teddy comes with so much utility, I was actually kind of surprised. Having access to a party-wide attack buff and defense buff on the same character, multi-target defense down in the form of Marakunda, which, by the way, is the best type of debuff. Sure, it does take him 5 extra levels to get a 100% heal compared to Yukiko, but the optimal team comp absolutely has a place for Teddy on it. Some people say he sucks because of his 3rd awakening skill, Kamui Miracle, can actually help the opponent. But yeah, just don't learn it. Just stick to what he's good at. That's what I would do. Did I mention he also gets 3 elemental resists in a game with only 8 ways of dealing damage? That goes a long way in keeping him healthy. But he has no concentrate, so his damage does lag behind a bit. So he just barely escapes Bear tier and makes it into A. And lastly, for the investigation team, we have Detective Naoto, who actually receives pretty big buffs in Persona 4 Golden, gaining access to all Tier 3 elemental magics, which complement her already good light and dark skills. She can also learn physical attacks and almighty attacks too. There's just one problem. On higher difficulties, Naoto will always hit like a wet noodle. The damage meta of P4 heavily revolves around the quad elemental passive boosts, which Naoto can never receive, only gaining passives that boost her instant kill chance. Defensively, she also has no weakness, which is amazing, but due to her low endurance, she might just die in one hit, regardless if she was struck by a weakness or not. Even with Concentrate, she just doesn't deal a lot of damage without those boosting passives. I've seen people sing her praises, but for me, she never really does any substantial damage in boss fights, which is mainly what you need her to do. Sorry Naoto fans. And lastly, we have Persona 5 Royal, which thanks to some gameplay changes, we can do some absurd damage with baton pass and technical attacks. So characters that assist in setting up these high damage turns are highly desirable to me. We also have the addition of Persona traits, which every party member receives. These are unique for each character and can drastically affect their playstyle and ranking. That being said, going in order, we have Morgana, who I don't have a lot of great things to say about. He boasts high magic like the other healers on this list, but with a very low endurance stat, which is far from ideal. Offensively, he is on par with other magic attackers and even receives the Miracle Punch line of skills, which have a high crit rate, and if he faces a foe that nullifies wind damage, could be an alternative to casting a spell. Although its hit rate and crit rate may be low, it's an option, and that's about all the good things I have to say about him. Sadly, Morgana gets completely outshined by Royal's other healing character, and it's not even close. Additionally, his trait just doesn't make sense. It reduces the SP cost of healing and also increases its effectiveness. But his healing skills are 100%, so I don't even know why it has that aspect. C tier for Cat. I promise I'm not doing this on purpose. The final animal mascot of the Persona games is Ryuji, who is a phenomenal character. He's easily S tier. And I can't believe people say otherwise. In vanilla Persona 5, he was already fairly powerful, having access to Swift Strikes, which we already know how busted that skill is. There's just no debating it. But in Royal, he just gets even stronger. He gains the best buff at the very beginning of the game, Tarukaja. He can do more than double his own damage because he gets charged, and others don't. He has crazy high strength, and best yet are the Royal exclusives. Fighting Spirit granting your entire team charge, not just him, and his Persona trait is easily the best of the party members, having a 20% chance to increase physical damage by 80% for the entire party. Yeah, that's bananas. You can already do some insane damage with physical attacks, and Ryuji just makes them hit even harder. Usually, physical attackers don't have a ton of utility, but Ryuji just does for some reason. Whether it be Megaton Raid, God's Hand, Agniastra, it doesn't matter. Ryuji is just the GOAT. He also just gets Matarukaja, and like that's the best buff in the game. I don't care who disagrees with me. Ryuji is S tier every time. If the monkey is the master of melee, then Panther is the practitioner of pyromancy. Say that 10 times fast. Take almost everything I said about Ryuji and flip it in regards to An. He buffs, she debuffs. He charges, she concentrates. But there is one big boon to An that Ryuji doesn't get, and that's Lullaby. Despite learning Lullaby at level 30, this skill remains good for the entire game. When faced with a swarm of shadows and you have the initiative, why not take the gamble and cast Lullaby? If there are 4 shadows, statistically at least 2 of them will be put to sleep, resulting in easy technicals for the rest of your party. Her third awakening skill is also a party-wide concentrate, which I only slightly value lower because, well, it eats a lot of SP, and An needs that SP to continue to do damage. Oh yeah, did I mention she can heal? The only real con I can think of is a lack of survivability, being on par with Morgana's endurance. So A tier for An, yeah. That fits. So we have crazy high physical damage and we have crazy high magic damage. Where does that leave Yusuke? Well, he can dodge physical attacks, and that's about it. When it comes to physical damage, there are 4 party members who do this exact same job. And frankly, Yusuke is the worst at it. His main gimmick is having a physical attack that gains a boost when used during a baton pass. But from my testing, these skills just are not viable, as the main character is almost always going to receive the most benefit from a max baton pass. Even with him gaining a source of charge in Royal, he just doesn't offer as much as a selfish attacker, until he obtains his special skill, boosting all ally stats for 3 turns. But unlike Persona 4 Golden, the main character can also do this too, leaving poor Yusuke on the bench more times than I'd like. Now it pains me to say this, but Makoto Nijima, you are you are really good. She is clearly the developer's favorite girl, as she is an unbelievably strong support character. She excels at one thing, and that's keeping the team alive, eventually learning Medea Rahan and Ma Rakukaja. And frankly, she doesn't need any other skills. This combo alone is just that good. She's incredibly durable, makes others durable, and even learns the skill Checkmate, a multi-target debilitate, something no other character can do, a very valuable skill. Also, she just gets a gun that gives her +5 magic, so her spells hit pretty hard too. She can eventually learn concentrate. Like, she almost does everything. Makoto gets an easy S tier for the same reason Yukiko does. Now for someone who's a little bit more balanced. Quite literally, Haru is a split physical and magic attacker, who also comes with some support skills. Admittedly, she doesn't exactly set a great first impression in the chapter that she joins. Her main gun skill is multi-targeting and only has a 70 base accuracy, so it's going to miss a lot. But her sole weakness, nuclear, is such a rare spell in this game. She may as well have no weakness at all. While she isn't bad as a magic attacker, I do tend to use her more as a source of gun damage, because while everyone does have a gun on them, her just skill one-shot kill does so much goddamn damage, it's absurd. My only real beef with her is that her heat riser skill is just not that desirable, and her shields, while cool in concept, don't really amount to much. By the time you really get life wall and that gets going, most enemies are just gonna use almighty skills, completely defeating the point of the barrier. That and a lack of agility will keep her skills missing, which is a horrible thing to happen, while other characters just simply don't have this issue. I like the idea of an all-out offense character, but sadly, being a jack of all trades does not get you far in Persona. There's only so many stats to go around. I'd still use her over Yusuke though, whatever that's worth. And now we have Goro Akechi, and man, I'm surprised how bad you are. Wow. For whatever reason, before I went into making this video, I was under the impression that Goro had insane damage, only to find out he's actually kind of bad at that. He also has low HP, a trait that only really benefits him, and low damage, thanks to him lacking the boosting passives everyone else gets. His only saving grace is the skill Debilitate, but if you go to the Jazz Club, any character can obtain this, and Makoto has a multi-targeting version of this skill. Essentially, there's never any reason to use Akechi over any other character, as he excels in no niche except almighty damage, which isn't even that useful in P5 Royal, thanks to technical hits bypassing resistances. He's just bad. F tier. And lastly, we have the Royal exclusive character, Kasumi Yoshizawa, who can do just absolutely stupid amounts of damage. But out of the physical attackers, she has the lowest HP. Her best skill also eats a whopping 25% of that small HP bar. So she's a glass cannon archetype who has a tendency to dodge thanks to alley dance. She can also buff the party's critical hit rate, which really only her and Joker are capable of. Like Haru, she's a mixed attacker and has bless skills that can hit very hard. But I'll be honest, keeping her alive can be a bit of a struggle. As we all know, dodging in Persona is not at all consistent, and her Persona trait isn't very helpful either, unlike Haru's, which is, well, pretty great. But when she does hit and doesn't take damage in return, Masquerade can outdamage Ryuji by quite the significant amount. Like, it's not even close. If this skill procs twice, you can see some really crazy numbers. But at the end of the day, Joker is the star of the show. He can deal way more damage than even her, and support characters are always going to be the better option. And boosting crit rate really only functions if you have a purely physical team comp. It can be helpful against the super boss though, and a B tier makes sense to me. And that will conclude the ranking video. Like I said before, Persona is a very easy game, especially Royal, but I don't know, I just like, comparing and contrasting what teams bring to the table, and I learned a lot about the franchise while making this. Did you? Let me know. Make sure to leave a like if you want to see more videos like this in the future. And thanks to my patrons, whose name appear here at the end of my scripted videos, and special thanks to 123 Garfield, Hawks, Jeremy A, Carquad, and Shadow Roamers. And yeah, see you guys in the next video coming real soon. Bye.